the Department of Equity, Diversity, and Opportunities, Henrico County Schools. And we're happy that Teresa has agreed to lead this panel discussion on the impact of imagery on Native American Indians. And of course, Teresa she's a citizen of Mattaponi and Chickahominy, or that's your heritage?
Yeah, Mattaponi is the one I'm a member of.
Okay.
And then Chickahominy is my mom's tribe.
Right. Okay. All right. I see. So how about if, first of all, people on the panel, if you will introduce yourselves, now that we have our guests here, if you'll introduce yourselves and tell everyone which tribe you are a citizen of. You want to start with you, Raymie?
Hi, my name is Raymie Holmes. I am a citizen and the tribal administrator here in Yukon County for the Chickahominy Indian Tribe Eastern Division.
Okay, and how about you, Keith? You got to unclick again. Unmute.
Sometimes it's delayed in the unmuting.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Hello, my name is Keith Anderson. I'm a citizen of the Nashville Indian Nation from the Suffolk, Virginia area, and I currently serve as one of the tribe's council persons. Thank you.
Okay. And then this looks like Ken.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ken Costello. I am a citizen of the Chickahominy Indians Eastern Division. Also have significant ties to the Mattaponi Reservation as well.
Okay. And Teresa is our presenter.
Yes. And my name is Teresa Custalow Hobbs. I am a member of the Mattaponi Indian tribe. And my mother is a member of the Chickahominy. And Ken is my cousin, and I have relations to everybody in some way, form or another, in some way down the line. And so we always take that connection. We are not federally recognized. Our tribe, Mattaponi, is not federally recognized yet. So we still have a member on our cards for membership of not exactly citizenship quite yet with Mattaponi. I'm also a kindergarten teacher in Henrico County Public Schools. I've been teaching in Henrico County Public Schools for 21 years. I taught second grade for 14, and I've been in kindergarten for 7 of those years now. And this is my daughter, Allie, and she kind of is in and out of our screen. We're at home in a room that's like full of furniture stacked on top of furniture. So we're using a background screen. And so she keeps twisting, spinning because, she can't sit still like I can't. So she's kind of in and out of your screen. But this is my daughter, Allie.
Hello.
And she's also a member of the Mattaponi Indian tribe and will be sharing perspectives from a middle school student side today during our presentation. So to get us started, this whole thing came about because I had gone to one of our, I don't know, what do we called it, that series that we did where we had different people groups that were being represented and talked about and discussed with education. And one of them I went to, and I was asking a lot of questions about the Native American Indians because every time they would show bar graphs or pie graphs, we wouldn't even show up on them. And so apparently that stuck out in Jean's mind, and she gave my name as a suggestion for someone to be able to speak on behalf of Native American Indians within the county, which is something I've been trying to do for years and years and years. One of our former social studies heads, she and I had multiple conversations over years, but I'm finally being given the opportunity. She's not in the county anymore. We have a different head, and I think things are definitely going to move a different direction now. So I'm very excited about that. Have a lot of support from the teachers at my school. They are all very excited about what's going to be moving on from here. It's been very interesting this week trying and explain to people, get a lot of questions about how am I supposed to teach Thanksgiving and Native American Indians now and Pilgrims, because now that the truth is finally coming out, they don't know what to do. And so it's just been fun being able to guide people and redirect the way that education needs to go to make sure that accurate things are being taught. But one of the things that also was brought up in my interview process I did with Diane, she wrote an article on me in the county newsletter. And one of the things that came up was that we had some students that were realizing that there was a possibility of a controversy over a mascot in one of our schools in the county. And so it kind of brought up some ideas and thoughts with us. We all started thinking about, well, maybe we should do a panel. They knew they wanted to do a panel discussion. We just didn't really have a topic nailed down. And then we were like, imagery. It needs to be imagery because that's such a hot topic right now. And so I want to share with you just some stuff that I have found out. I have done some research. Like I said, this has really led me through doing a lot of digging into stuff, learning more about things. Sometimes we all tend to have an opinion. And then when we start digging in and finding out the history and the historical facts behind things, it can tend to change your opinion and you start having a better understanding of things. And so then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't feel that way because I've had a chance to research. The other thing that's important is also contacting different people and asking different opinions, because one person of any one people group does not represent the entire people group. And so it's very important to be able to have different people and different opinions and be able to speak to them, which is another reason why I wanted to do this panel, because even though we might all still have the same stance on imagery, our reasoning behind our stance may be very different. And I wanted to give everybody a chance to be able to speak to different members of the panel today and ask your questions of what we are talking about today. I want to bring up a couple of things to start a talking point. The only thing that I would ask is that if you could please just kind of decide, or if you want to ask the question, if you decide you want to point it towards one of us, you are more than welcome to do that. If you want to say, I want to get Allie's opinion because she's in 7th grade at Holman, Hungry Creek oh my goodness, I can't speak this afternoon. Been teaching all day from Hungry Creek Middle School. And so you might want, that person's opinion. You might want, Allie, stop, please. I'm sorry. She's going to end up cutting me off. So I want if you want to really just kind of point it towards one of us, because I'm afraid that if we all take turns answering every single question, we will run out of time today. So that's just the only thing that I wanted to present out there for that. I also wanted to make sure that if you please, once you speak your question, if you wouldn't mind just muting afterwards so that we don't get the feedback and the reverb in there. So I'm going to share with you a presentation of some things that I have found on panel discussion. So an impact of imagery on Native American Indians. Is it positive, beneficial, or negative? And then these are the names of our friends that are joining us today and the tribes that are being represented. And the Nansemond Indian Tribe, the Chickahominy Indians, Eastern Division, and the Mattaponi Indian Tribe, all within Virginia. So these are just the pictures. I just wanted to show you a representation of the tribes that are in Virginia. I don't have a representative from each one of them, but I do at least have 3 in there. But there are, as you can see, multiple tribes in the state of Virginia. So if there's anybody out there that's looking at an opportunity to be able to reach out and ask, there are more than just 2 or 3 tribes out there that you could certainly research and look into. These were some images that I found yesterday. This actually popped up, believe it or not, on a PowerPoint that was in our suggested material for teaching Thanksgiving and Native American Indians. And these 2 pictures popped up right away on the first one. And I'm like emailing my grade level, like, please don't use this PowerPoint. And there's all kinds of things in here that are just not exactly appropriate. It can be very offensive for Native American Indians. So this is kind of like a picture of a true, an actual photo of one. But then this is what, unfortunately, Native Americans end up being portrayed as, which is more of a cartoon, non-realistic, which unfortunately leads to that imagery impact on Native Americans. It takes us from being people down to cartoon imagery, to representation and not actual people. And so that tends to really stir your education, because when you start teaching kids about Native American Indians, these are the kind of pictures that might come up in their head as opposed to one of a real Native American Indian person. The impacts that imagery have on Native Americans. Pocahontas. I could spend an entire hour talking about Pocahontas and the negativity from there. I push against that all the time for people not to show that in schools because of this is not real. This did not happen. Pocahontas was not 16 years old or 23, whatever they're trying to make her look like here. She was anywhere between the ages of 10 and 12 when she was going through this whole thing. She was never in a romantic relationship with anybody during this time period that they are trying to represent. There's just so many wrong things going on in there, but the portrayal of Pocahontas is completely different from the reality of who she was and what she was. Westerns tend to put quite the negative imagery and portrayal out on Native American Indians, and they are a lot of times used in such a joking manner that it just beats down on the people being human beings and who they are and what they stand for and what they represent. There's some other imageries that are out there, hot topics going on right now. The Redskins, and then you have Cleveland Indians, and you have school mascots that are out there. Within the county, I'm sorry, go ahead. Somebody want to say something? There was somebody's mic. I didn't want to. If you want to stop and ask a question as we go through, then that's perfectly fine. Is anybody up there? Okay. All right. Well, let me go back just to show. This is what I was talking about. John Rolfe Middle School has the Indians as their mascot, and then Henrico High School Warriors. It's and there's again controversy in whether or not this symbol is even appropriate. And then I found in a lot of my research, I did find that Indians are people, not mascots. And so they're asking that no stereotypes be in our schools, representing Native American Indians in negative manners. This little article, there are several articles that I would like to reference throughout today. Native mascotry is a term that this Native American Jacqueline Keeler had said that she coined to describe the practices that surround a Native mascot. It's not just about the static image of the mascot, be it somewhat noble and prosaic or an ugly caricature with a feather on top. It's the creative license such mascots gives fans to reenact outdated stereotypes to play Indian. These practices include the wearing of red face, the misuse of Native regalia, and the chanting of fake Hokie war chants and tomahawk chops. Some of this stuff was incredibly eye-opening. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. When all of this stuff first came out about the Redskins and about all these different things, I thought, my goodness, everybody's trying to strip Native Americans out of people's memories and out of representation. They're just trying to keep pushing us away, that everybody forgets about us, because even history right now is not centered around Native Americans the way that it needs to be. But then I started doing all this research, realizing, wow, the impact that this has on the Native American Indian community is just phenomenal. And then I started looking back at all my years of teaching and the different responses that my students have given, especially when I start talking about myself being a Native American Indian and the questions that I get. It really is just all resonated really loudly throughout all of this. So I'm going to stop right here before I keep going, because there's a few more things that I have in there about mascots and information that I have found, opinions from other tribes. And I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions about any of the stuff that I've already presented up to this point. All right, so one of the questions that popped up is, which term is most appropriate to use? Which one of my panel would like to take that? Keith, would you like to go for it?
I can. So unmute. You hear me or am I off mute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Truthfully, it's family-wise and personally, I don't believe there's one that's any better than the other. I would prefer if a person spent the time I got to know me, that they would recognize me by my nation, that I'm a Nasman citizen versus Native American or American Indian. I don't think it's, again, more so a play on words. But again, to me, the most correct reflection would be to recognize me by my nation and by my people.
And would that
Versus,
include, like when you're teaching a unit about Native American Indians, how would you refer to them? Because you're not necessarily going to sit there and talk about, mention every single tribe every single time you talk. So that's kind of what they want to know too. Like, how do they refer to our people group as a whole when they are teaching?
well, the biggest sense too, we all know that we were misrepresented as, with the Columbus aspect and being named Indians. That is a misnomer right off the bat. But again, to go into maybe a lot of rhetoric about one or the other, I just feel, again, with persons that if there were a group of us, say again, in the classroom setting, that each different person who was in a educational environment would be designated by and represented by the tribe that they are.
Okay. Raymie, would you like an opportunity to speak to that?
Honestly, when it comes to the term, I find none of them offensive, but whenever I try to describe us as a tribal community or as Native American, I try to use the term Indigenous or Indigenous Americans. It kind of differentiates us more from the Middle Eastern or Asian Indians. Anybody can be Native American. I mean, at this point, with so many people, from the time that this country was founded, Native is a little bit too broad, but whenever I use the term Indigenous or Indigenous American, that's what I prefer to. That's my preference of using, but I don't find any term offensive at all.
Okay. Ken, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Raymie on this one. I will say again, and I think a great learning for everybody on the call today is that you can talk to somebody who is Native American, who is Indigenous, and you're going to get different perspectives. I work with a young lady who's from another Virginia tribe, and she is adamant that American Indian is not appropriate, and she prefers Native American or either Indigenous as the right term to use. So I think if there's a rule of thumb that I would give, more than likely probably the most offensive would be calling somebody an American Indian. Everybody's not bothered by that, but I think if you had to rank it on a sliding scale, then I would probably avoid that, because it is kind of the reference to the Eastern Indians as opposed to the people who were indigenous to our country.
However, if you go out west, you'll hear them use the term Indian more than you will hear anything else. So, I mean, you're going to have different regions will have a different term that they have a preference to. So,
yeah, and I tend to use all three so that I can make sure. So I always cover Native American Indians. I cover all of it, especially when we're addressing our SOLs. That's the way, like when Diane was writing on doing a writing piece on me, I asked her to make sure that she just put in there every time Native American Indians. That way we're covering everybody in that Indigenous community. with that, and to be honest with you, me, with my raising and growing up, I've always heard the terms Native American Indian, and I have just recently been introduced to and hearing Indigenous people being used more often. So I think like Ken said, everybody kind of, like you said, in any community, you're going to have different thoughts, different aspects. For the educators out there, I would either use Indigenous American or Native American Indian. I wouldn't use, like Ken said, Native American or American Indian. All right, next question. All right, hold on. I got to pull this up so I can see the whole thing. Are you aware of any children's literature or other resources that give the authentic story of Pocahontas? Oh, that's an excellent question. Yes, but I would like my panel to speak more than I do, because I'm getting a chance to speak more on Saturday. So either one of you know of a particular piece that really has the true story of Pocahontas in it?
Nothing that would that is appropriate for young children.
That's a good answer. That is a very good answer. Keith?
No, I don't at all. No, I don't.
No.
Yeah, nothing here either, T.
Yeah, nothing. So what I will do for you, Cara Jean, is do some more research into that. I do have a couple of books that I use in my classroom. I improvise the story and make sure that I put the real pieces in there, the truth pieces in there, but I do have a couple that have appropriate pictures for young children in there that I could share with you. All right, hold on, I got a lot of questions coming in. All right, let's see. I teach 7th grade history at John Rolfe Middle. We were discussing the mascot change the other day, and a student asked me, why are we only just now changing it? I really didn't have a good answer for him. What are your thoughts? Why have we allowed these stereotypes to persist for so long? Who wants to attack that one?
I'll take a whack at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of it is just, you have to think about history and where we've come from. And there has been a culture of it's okay, a culture of acceptance. That's all you've ever known. So it was part of the normal vernacular. It was part of normal culture. So until people really started saying, well, you know what, I'm not okay with that. And there became a groundswell of sentiment within the Native community and people raising the issues and advocates for the Native communities raising an issue. I don't think it really was an issue. So it's, honestly, I don't think, and I saw some other questions, people really haven't had I don't know if the heart's the right word, to deal with the real issues. They wanted to kind of whitewash it, if you will. So it's, we live in different times, though, and we can be more honest and open today, which is good.
Yeah. Raymie, you wanted to say something?
No, that was good. That was a lot nicer than the way I was going to put it, Ken.
Okay. Very good.
That's what happens when you used to work in HR, Raymie.
Yeah. So I agree with that. In my research, I really did find a lot of information in there about just the fact that, Native American Indians just really have not been that squeaky wheel to the point that we're not a people group that's going to bring a lot of attention to ourselves in negative manners. But we are finally starting to get to a point where we are learning how to stand up and speak out, and stand up for who we are and for these stereotypes. And it's definitely, this actually, to be honest with you, from the research I have found, our attempt to try to clear our name and stereotypes has been going on for many, many years. And we're just, unfortunately, we're only chipping away a little at a time. We're only able to be successful a little at a time, because there's been a lot of pushback. Because like Ken said, there's been a lot of pretty picturesque things being made to make things, people prefer the prettier story, the other than the real truth that is out there. And so, you know, it's easier to teach about Thanksgiving having the white man and the Indians sitting around the table together. That's what people always say. Well, it was the Pilgrims and the Indians at the table. Well, you know, did you really read into that story? Have you really dug into what has really happened? Why was that happening? There's a lot of truth behind that is missed within the SOLs and the education that we give. I'll be touching more on that on Saturday when I do my talk about how we need to be teaching and the things we need to put in our SOL to make sure that we're teaching Thanksgiving correctly, that we're teaching things about the Native American Indians correctly as well. Why have we been allowing this to go on for so long? I truly, honestly, I think Ken just hit it right on the button. People just don't want to stand up and address this and make change. They just want to accept things and allow them to just continue to go the way that they are. I'm struggling with how to counteract the false narrative with the Disney princess loving crowd. Yeah, that's a fight that I have every year. Let's see. Who wants to go with that one? Keith, Raymie, Ken?
I'll tackle that one.
All right, go for it.
I think it needs to come from Disney. I think Disney did a wonderful job of with Mulan of trying to correct the history that that they try to make pretty on the first Mulan. Okay, and then they showed the live action and how more accurately they depicted how she was of her. They more accurately depicted her story. I think that the tribes in Virginia, we need to petition Disney. And we need to say, okay, you did the wrong thing. You did us wrong. You didn't consult with us. And we need to make our voices heard and say, we want you to correct what you've done. I get that people love the movie. I've never seen it. I don't care to see it. But on the other hand, you know, having that false depiction also opens up the idea of having a conversation of this is what has really happened. You know, there's also that side that you have to think about as well. But I think that, you know, with our voices collectively, we as a tribal community, because we are family. I mean, you go from one tribe to the next, I'm sorry, the ties are there. We can do this, and we should petition Disney and say, you know, you did it for Mulan. Why can't you honor us and do it for us too? So that's my take. So
one of the things I share with students is that it was actually one of the ladies on as a member of our tribe was the one that was originally asked and was actually on set of Disney's Pocahontas. They were actually using her to be the one to resemble Pocahontas after. It was when they started changing the history in the movie that she pushed back against Disney, and they refused to change it and make it accurate, and so she walked off the set. I was incredibly impressed with that, with her, and that's the fact that she was willing to take that stand. It was just sad that it still didn't cause Disney to go back and make the changes that were necessary in that movie. Cara Jean, what I tell teachers at my school is if they choose to show that movie, which they really shouldn't because it is historically inaccurate, that they then need to make sure that they are pausing it at all the points that it is incorrect, and they need to make sure that they are giving the real history as to what actually happened in that movie during these times, and how what they are displaying and what they are putting in that movie is incorrect. Because if they turn around and think about that movie when it's time for them to do the SOL testing over Pocahontas, they're going to get everything wrong. So that's one thing that I really encourage all the teachers to do. I've tried very hard to get it out of everybody's classroom in the school, but I'm against the same wall that we are nationally with trying to, with all of the imagery issues. and things that are going on. So I do encourage them, though. I've even had one teacher that was like, well, will you come in while I'm watching the movie and have me pause it? And I'm like, I'd really rather you not show it. But if, but I have done that. I have gone into other teachers' classrooms and stopped the movie at times and gone through and given the historical accuracies to it. All right, let's move on through some of the time. All right, so as a former student of John Rolfe Middle School, it wasn't until the last 5 years or so that the depiction of Indigenous and enslaved people in the main office was removed. So there's we're chipping away a little at a time. What are resources that you have come to love when it comes to teaching Native Indigenous American literature? It seems that there's a broader consensus now that the way it has been done in the past is problematic, but I've struggled to find current, reliable resources when it comes to covering this area of American lit. I can send you, I have your name on here, I can send you some sites for you to use. If any of my panel has any other educational type things that you think that I could suggest and send, want to share?
Yeah, Teresa, I would just suggest the National Museum of the American Indian.
That's what
they have an amazing educational department with a curriculum for the schools. So I would definitely do some outreach there to see what they might have now.
Yeah, I have, and I actually am sharing that all on Saturday. I have and I can send out earlier if I need to, have a ton of stuff from there. I have reached out to the representative that you sent me to, Ken, and he has given me a ton of information. And so some of my kindergarten teachers are already moving around from doing the inappropriate things at Thanksgiving to doing more Indigenous type crafts and activities with the students this week. So that's been very encouraging. Let's see. What efforts have been done by HCPS that can offer varied perspectives to our history courses? That I can't answer. Jean, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we of doing curriculum audits and updates to our social studies curriculum with this express intent of wanting to infuse varied perspectives, multiple perspectives. Some of that's happening at the state level as well, with some of the changes that have been made, and that's been specific recently to our African American history standards. But obviously, the hope extend to all groups as well, because we certainly have a lot of work that can be done in terms of our Indigenous people as well with our standards and our history, and then looking at broadening our English courses as well, as Joshua pointed out, really trying to look at the literature that we are providing for students and making sure that it's representative of multiple perspectives. So there is a lot of work to be done, but I think that we are finally in a point where we're able to make some real moves in that direction.
Yes, and a real positive is I've also been asked to be part of our SOL committee over the summer, where we're going to be sitting down and revising a lot of the SOLs with Native American Indians, and so I'm really excited about that. So hopefully that will also get a chance to get in there and kind of help fix and correct some of this stuff that's just been been fighting it for years, but it's finally happening. So yay! So excellent questions. I'm at the end of the questions right now on there. So I want to go back to my presentation and just show some more imagery things that are coming up so that we can hopefully spark some more conversation about the imagery across the nation and the effects that it has. And let me get back to where I was, if it will come. Oh, come on. So Microsoft Teams likes me sometimes, and other times it does not. It just really depends on when it is, especially when I'm trying to test. It really doesn't like me. Hold on. I know you're seeing everything I'm doing, and I apologize for that, but I am going to try to, there we go, get it back. All right, and I'm going to skip through to as soon as it comes up. I'm going to go ahead and skip back to where we were earlier. I know you can read. I'm going to read through this kind of quickly, and then I'm going to send you guys, if I can, I'll have Cara Jean help me out with getting information out to you guys with some links to some websites that are just phenomenal. I am going to share a lot of the information from the museum, but I also found some really neat Native American tribes that are Indian tribes that are just working with their own newspapers, their own broadcasts, their own stories, their own takes and versions on things. So I want to go through this. The use of Native peoples as sports mascots is a phenomenon of American pop culture. While some can trace roots as far back as the late 19th century, the bulk of Native sports mascots were created by non-Native entities beginning around 1910 and peaking in the decades of the 1930s. The rationale for creating Native mascots most commonly revolved around the idea of saving what America saw as vanishing cultures. Organizations as old as the Improved Order of Red Men made popular this premise, and in the decades following 1900, it became a common practice in non-Native spaces, including schools, colleges, and professional sports teams. The creation of Native mascots at this time almost universally did not involve Native people. By 1900, only approximately 250,000 Native peoples were left in the United States in total. Until 1924, Native peoples were not citizens of the United States, and due to various laws, could not legally leave reservations except under special circumstances in nearly all parts of the country. Even after citizenship was granted, many of these community laws would remain in place, and Native people were still often confined to Indian country during the peak of creation of Native mascots. As a result, many were created as interpretations of Native cultures by non-Natives through the Euro-American lens, and created and perpetuated a number of American pop culture stereotypes about Native peoples and cultures throughout U.S. history, continuing to this day. So this was a little commentary piece that I found I thought was very, very interesting and really speaks a lot to the racial stereotyping, the inaccurate racial portrayals, and the cultural appropriation that they do not actually honor a living, breathing people. Plain and simple, cultural appropriation, especially when members of the culture protest the appropriation, is not respectful. Appropriating Native American imagery honors no one but the prejudice. And this picture just really, honestly, like I said, for the longest time, I was like, what in the world is wrong with having, I love the fact that there are teams that are representing Native American Indians. But then when I really started reading into this, I'm like, wow, seriously? Look what his shirt says. Go Savages, kill them. I know they're talking about in the game, game-wise, but the application is coming from the stereotype that are given to Indigenous peoples. But they think, but I'm honoring you, dude. Just a lot of things that are going on with there. Here's people protesting against the name of the NFL team. There are actually, I will be honest with you, some articles that I have read from other tribes that won't even use the actual name of the team. They call it the R word, because it's just, to a lot of tribes, just as offensive as using the N word. Because of how it was perceived and how it was used. There is no honor in a name that represents racism. I am a person, not a mascot. It's just, there are just so many different tribes out there with so many different opinions. I thought this spoke just volumes. Native Sun News Today editorial: sports teams continue to denigrate Indian people. Literally, these are all mascots. This is an article that in a website I'd be happy to send. This gentleman right here actually acted as his high school's Indian mascot for 50 years. Well, not for 50 years, but 50 years later, he finally is speaking out against ending this, because in his short-lived time as being the mascot for his school, he realized at his home game, he thought he was out there representing his people. Again, that misconception. He thought he was out there representing his people, and he gets out there with his team. He's doing an actual authentic tribal dance. He's wearing authentic regalia, and he's doing his thing. But then when they travel and they go to another location and he goes out to do this, he is just, I mean, just completely mortified. I mean, people were throwing stuff at him, screaming just very negative, awful things at him. He got to the point where he backed off and was going by people. They started spitting on him. I mean, just the whole idea of him being a Native American Indian and out there doing his thing was just being, I mean, I can't imagine him being there. Just reading his write-up on this is just, it's heartbreaking. But he is definitely, he has this whole display that you see behind him. He travels and presents this at different places that he goes for people to understand what imagery is doing to the Indigenous people and the effects that it has on others that are learning about Indigenous people. All around the world, this is going on. Indian mascot names are stirring outrage. And for some, they think it's a pride issue. I thought this was very interesting about high school mascots in California and how many of them have references to Indigenous groups. Not all of them are completely like all the warriors. When I looked up all of that, that's not all tied to the Indigenous people, because some of them are actually talking about like war soldiers, but some of them are definitely in referencing to that. I thought this was very interesting, that historically most teams that use Native mascots chose to do so during the, I'm assuming I'm saying this, natter of race relations. The Native Americans sank to their lowest numbers. Their cultures, languages, and land bases were also endangered. But meanwhile, eugenics, a science that explained Native defeat as genetically ordained, rose to its zenith. Ironically, so did the Improved Order of Red Men, a fraternal organization that did not let American Indians join. White appropriation of Native symbols reflects the intense racism of that area. Mascots treat American Indians as unchanging has-beens who inhabited the past but don't count nowadays. We need to communicate just the opposite, that we value them today. Plains Indian culture was itself an example of rapid change triggered by syncretism, pulling ideas together from two cultures to form something new. And that's obviously typically how they change. But all Native children need to understand the concept of syncretism. They do not have to face a stark choice between becoming white and staying Indian. Non-natives need to learn the term too, partly so we can encourage natives to stay true to themselves while contributing to our syncretic American culture. This is one that I wanted to go back and spark conversation on. So I want questions coming in. Feel free to unmute and speak up. But I want you to really look at these two pictures. The Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian used these two images to advertise a symposium critiquing the use of Native Americans as mascots in sports images. Students can think about how the first image is no longer okay, though it was in the natter, not sure if I'm saying that, while the second image still circulates. So you look at the differences, look at those two. Okay, so under the first one, you see not cool. The other one says go tribe. So I'm going to stop there because I really want to get opinions and thoughts. And hold on, because I got to get you back. So I want questions. I want thoughts. I would be happy to open it up to our panel and give me your thoughts on all of that. Raymie, would you like to start?
I'm just a little baffled by it right now. I just, sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied right now.
Okay.
I'm just shaking my head at it.
It's amazing. Like I said, what I found when I started going through all of that was just like, holy cow. It was just amazing in so many ways. Keith? Okay, go quick.
It is very heartfelt disparity. Again, showing us with the pronounced nose and the grinning face. And again, there's nothing positive about it at all.
Ken?
Yeah, I'm definitely with Raymie and I think Keith on this. I mean, it's just, honestly, I guess the emotional reaction, it makes me angry to see that, to just see that characterization that this is what all natives look like, this is how they dress, this is the regalia they wear. So it's it's very upsetting.
Well, and it's when I learned about it, it's honestly, when I learned about it, like I said, as being an educator, it has just opened my eyes so much to how students are not able to fully understand. So when I'm teaching about Indigenous peoples, and I'm teaching about our history and our past, and then their concepts, the questions that they come up with, and the more I dig into this, the more I'm like, wow, because they are just brainwashed into thinking that we're no more than caricatures, and that we are no more than just people that walk around with red skin and feathers and carrying tomahawks and such all the time. Just that, it really does shock me, and I agree, Ken. It makes me angry. Raymie, I agree with you. It makes me sad. It gives me more drive to want to go out there and try to do more about it. That's why I'm even more excited about the fact that Henrico County Public Schools are giving me a voice now, and I love that. I'm really happy that I can be one that gets to take advantage of that. Let's see. This concept is completely understandable. We do, however, live in a society where the majority has never really cared about the authentic stories of the minority. I am glad that there appears to be a shift in the nation. As an African American female with Native American roots, clearly the image on the left impacts me, but seeing it beside the mascot just makes me want to add that to the story I share. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That just, when I saw that last night when I was looking through finalizing pictures, it just blew me away. And I was like, this has got to be a stopping point where we can stop and discuss this, because there is another one that I'm going to share with you in a minute that is going to just blow a lot of you out of the water. I could not believe it when I read it. But I agree, we need to do something with this, and the impact. I just need people to understand the impact that it has on Indigenous people. It's not a positive one. And for the longest time, I personally, and I admit that loud and clear, was thinking, well, I just don't want people to start taking away these images, because I don't want people to forget about Indigenous people and only think about us in November and around Thanksgiving time. But now that I have been doing the research and understanding the reasoning behind and then what it's doing and how it's impacting, it is just opening my eyes to things that I just would have never thought of. And then, like Raymie is feeling right now, I was feeling that way when I was putting all this together. I was just like, holy cow, this is just something that we really need to discuss, and we need to make sure we get it out there, that people understand that it's not necessarily a matter of pride and representation. There was Ken brought up one college to me that has worked with a Native American Indian tribe, and I don't remember the name of the tribe that worked with them, but it was the University of Utah, if I'm not mistaken. Ken, is that right?
Yeah, it was the Ute Indian tribe in Utah. Yes.
And do you want to go ahead and share that story with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost a little bit of kind of revenge, ironically, if you want. So the Ute people are very proud and happy that the University of Utah uses their name to associate with their football team. But the financial boon for the tribe is they get paid multi-millions of dollars every year for the Utes using the University of Utah using that name. So it's a little bit of revenge aspect if you if you will, with that. I kind of have the same feeling when I, hear about the Pamunkey open a casino in Richmond and knowing who's going to come in it. It's a, it's kind of a little bit of it's kind of Indian humor. Sorry guys, but it's it's kind of a little payback. Unfortunately, with I mean, gambling and drugs and alcohol, obviously nobody wants that to impact anybody's lives. But it is ironic. It's definitely ironic.
Hey, Ken, can I double back? Can I back you up on that? Because I believe that the Florida
Yes.
Seminoles also that they
Exactly.
benefit from the University of, is it the University of Florida, Florida University, utilizing they have an agreement
Yeah, Florida State.
where
Florida State.
well, thank you.
Exactly.
So so those are some very defined lines where they're like, yes, you can, but they're benefiting out of it too. So I mean,
Yeah.
so.
Teresa, you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot I muted it so I wouldn't be reflecting with them open. So that's where I went with my title with, is it negative? Is it beneficiary? Or is it a positive impact? Is there a neutral impact? So when there's very few positive, and those are the few that they just mentioned, Florida State, University of Utah, that are a positive impact because they're literally working hand in hand. Now there is still the argument out there that that's how the Washington Redskins got their name, because they worked with a native indigenous group, is what some are saying out there with that. So there's lots of different sides of this. Overall, the majority of what I am finding is that the majority of the people are seeing this as a negative impact on the community. Depending on it, again, like I said, Florida State, University of Utah, they seem to be, the ones that are doing a positive. And Raymie, is that you that said the Blackfoot? Was that in reference to who worked with Washington? Okay. I had another comment that said, without the representation in mainstream media, etc., what is the image that you would like others to see or take away? Keith, I'll start with you on that one.
I would say the biggest thing, going back to, we were talking about Pocahontas, the biggest thing that really gets me is that there have been several opportunities for Virginia natives to be portrayed in a very real, strong, and dynamic way. And looking at movies like The New World and some other things, it really did us a poor disservice. And I would really like for, again, some things just to be done that, again, portrays our people in the way that we were depicted by John Smith and the different writings. And again, as Ken knows, I mean, a lot of the depictions of our people, especially the men, we were over 6 feet tall. Even the women, we were big people. And in the portrayals in some of these movies and the documentaries, they make us to be a very weak and timid looking people. And it's totally different than what you see with Dancing with Wolves or Last Mohicans. And I think, again, if there's opportunities to do projects again in the future for films and things of that nature, that we really need to be depicted in a very strong, memorable, and dynamic way, the way we deserve to be. And I would definitely like to see that in my lifetime.
That would be awesome. Raymie, you want to jump in?
Repeat the question one more time.
So without the representation in mainstream media, etc., what is the image that you would like others to see or take away?
Without the representation in mainstream media,
Mm-hmm.
I want people to remember that not all Indigenous people fit the mold of what a Plains Indian is. Okay, our East Coast Indians or Indigenous people, we have always been very, very stark different than the Plains. Very, very different people. And the idea that we're small, no, our people were not small. Our people did not live in teepees. You know, expand your idea of what an Indigenous person is, because we can't be pigeonholed into this one little box.
Love that. Ken?
Yeah, I would just kind of dovetail with Raymie and Keith. And I don't have the number exactly right, but you know, there are over 500 federally recognized tribes in the United States, and that does not include state recognized tribes or other communities. And each one of those communities have their own identity, their own culture, their own story. So, you know, honestly, I don't want to see anybody paint with any broad brush regarding the Native community. I'd love people to take the time to go and look and find out about those different communities and what's difference between the West Coast and the East Coast, or Utah versus California, or South Carolina versus Virginia or North Carolina. And really just because we are all one people, but very unique peoples, very unique people.
That is very true. And I like the fact that you brought that up. About the fact that we don't all fit this one mold. Because when I was even researching things about Eastern Woodland Indians, and about Indians, like patterns and designs and things, everything that popped up was mainly, like you said, your Plains Indians. Then and everybody always thinks if you're a Native American Indian, you live in a teepee. If you're a Native American Indian, you live on a reservation. We don't all live on reservations. Raymie and Keith don't live on reservations. They live within their community, with their tribe, but they were not restricted to that. Of course, that could be another whole hour. We could talk about all of that. But Raymie did say that there are 574 federally recognized tribes. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, Mattaponi is not yet federally recognized. I know that has started the process. I do not know how long it will get there. Hopefully not too long, but I am hoping that would be the case soon. With all of that in mind, I do want to throw out there one more image. I really want y'all to resonate with the impacts that this can have. And if each one of you that attends today can go away with what we have presented with you today and then spread it and share it, then hopefully we can get this out to as many within the school system as possible, so that we can help head off some of what is going on. Let me get back into this. I wanted to show you, maybe I didn't put it in there. I might have stuck it in. Well, I'll just tell you about it. I didn't stick it in, I guess, because I wasn't quite sure. But it's on one of my readings, so I'll just share it with you. There was one that talked about the fact of the impact that mascots have and how it demoralizes people. And one of them was that at one of the games, they actually took pigs and painted them red and stuck feathers on them and then released them on the field to run around. The comment was, if they had done that with another people group, like for the African American community, painted them black and put Afro wigs on them and sent them out into the field, what impact would that have had on that Indigenous group, or what that people group? What impact would it have had if they had done it with any people group? Your Latin American group, any people group like that, would have the impact that has and what that says to that people group as to what people think of them, and the imagery and the impact that has on not only them but our children that we're raising, and trying to build them up in that pride of who they are, and the good that has come of where we have been and how we have progressed to this point. One of the things I do talk with my students about every year is why I hyphenate my last name. It's Custalow Hobbs, because Costello is my my family name, and I hyphenate that because when people hear that name, they automatically relate me to my family and to that part of my life that I'm incredibly proud of. And I struggle with the fact that everybody does tend to look at me and say, but you don't quite fit the figure, the thought that I have in my head of what a Native American Indian should look like. So, and again, you get the typical responses of what people have seen in Mascots. Allie, I'd like to give you a chance just to speak one more time before we go. What is your take on Mascots and imagery and the impact that it has on people? What is your understanding of it? And just give us a real quick, because we're at our time.
Like just how we're looked upon.
How do you perceive imagery and the impact that it has on our community? And what is your understanding of it? Because it's not going to be the same as ours, because you don't have quite the history of it.
So from like a middle school perspective and how imagery goes and everything, all the animation, pictures and everything were things that we were taught as little kids. And a lot of us have grown up, and as the youth, we are like the next generation. So being taught these things at such a young age, we're going to stick to those things and then want to carry them on through our lives. So I can see how that can be wrong and everything with being all cartoony and everything. We should have been taught the realistic version and what they actually look like, rather than just a made-up picture or perspective of them and how people want them to look. People don't really care much about your background or heritage in the school systems. As I got older, I realized that not many people really care about your background or anything, and we aren't really taught anymore about the Native Americans. I really don't remember the last time we really talked about them, like much at all.
So one of the impacts that Allie was talking about too was that when she was younger, we all realized that in elementary school we spend a lot of time in RSLs talking about the different tribes and the different regions. And then she has noticed, though, as she has grown up and gotten now into middle school, that they don't spend quite as much time on that. And then what does get talked about are teams that have that logo or that mascot associated to them. So like with as far as like they have team jersey days. And so you see a lot of Washington jerseys out there. You see Braves and symbols as much out there, but not really. She doesn't see the excitement as much. It kind of is disappointing, as you know, when you're in elementary school and everybody finds out that you're a Native American Indian, that you have that background, everyone's excited about it. And then the older they get, the more it just kind of becomes like a, oh, okay, kind of deal. So I don't know.
We're not really like recognized is another way to put it.
Right.
But then if someone were to come along and be like, yeah, I used to live in like Africa or whatever, or as like a person of color would say, I'm not saying that they get more, sort of more attention actually.
Or people from just any people really from any background
Besides Native American get more attention and everything. But with like a Native American background and everything, people are like, oh yeah, we were taught that as kids. It's not so cool. All this stuff. So
I don't know. So that's where you get from as a middle school's perspective. So is there any response to any of that from Raymie, Keith, or Ken?
I'll take that one. I think that they would, especially with young people, that there's not a lot of representation for natives in entertainment. So a lot of times that they don't think it's cool. They don't think that it's the way to be. But there is a show that's going to be starting. I forget when. And I just remember it's named Sovereign. It is going to be I can't remember if it's going to be based on a reservation or not, but it is going to be pretty much an all-native show, and at least having the representation in mainstream entertainment can change that. For so long, and Ken, I want to kind of back up to what you said before a little while back. Our people, we had our heads down, and we were quiet, and we didn't make a lot of noise. And I think, especially now with our younger people, they don't fall into that. I'm going to keep quiet. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm just going to go with it. They want to be heard. And once they incorporate more of a Native story into mainstream entertainment, unfortunately, you'll probably still get a lot of that until they get older and then they think it's cool. But until that happens, you'll probably hear a lot of the same. But it's now one of those things where people think that being Native is cool. Yes, I'm okay. I'm gonna use the one that we always hear, and we know what we always hear. I'm Blackfoot or I'm Navajo. So, you'll hear that. So, and once it's more mainstream entertainment and people, and we actually have our voices heard, it'll change.
I agree. I got Cara Jean mentioned, I'm really interested in how we can counteract stereotypes by also providing representation of Indigenous people now in our current time. I feel like students think about Native American Indians as people who exist only in history and are often made invisible in our current society. And that is incredibly true. That's what, a lot of my students, I even asked the question the other day, because I always do my wow factor when I introduce our Thanksgiving and Native American Indian unit. Well, because we talk about the fact that they all think that Native American Indians are dead, that they're gone, that they just, that they're not here anymore. And then when I tell them that, you've seen one every day since the first day of school, they're like, no way. And then, instead of, being virtual, I had to make some sort of an impact. So I was like, so hold on a minute, I'm going to go get this person. So I had to walk out of the screen, out of the camera shot, and then come back into it. And be like, ta-da! And they're like, no way, you're actually they actually still live. And so it's, so I agree. I think we do need to get that. And then Nicole, you mentioned that you really think one of the issues is the lack of representation. And I agree wholeheartedly with that as well.
Yeah.
Keith, did you have anything you want to add? Any final touches to today's conversation on what a takeaway that you definitely want people to walk away with today?
Well, the biggest thing again, just realize we're all human beings, and just need to be heard, and we have needs very similar to each other, and it is very important that we have open and respectful dialogue moving forward so we can have real progress. But again, this is a great start with forums like this, and I really appreciate you and your staff facilitating it. And also seeing my friends Raymie and Ken being a part of it. So these type of things need to become more frequent in the future.
I agree. Ken?
Yeah, again, I just, Teresa, thank you for hosting. Thank you, Henrico Schools, for being willing to put the word out and work through your diversity and inclusion programs to educate, and just encourage you guys to continue to be part of the solution. Have people in, let them educate the kids, tell them the Native perspective, and it's hard to unwind those stories about the pilgrims and everybody sitting down and being all happy, but we need to, without freaking the kids out, right? to tell them what the truth really is. So thank you guys for being advocates and providing the opportunity.
Absolutely, yes. We have to do the G-rated version.
Yes.
Well, you all know that the history SOLs are being revised, and I talked to Teresa about this, and so I am really, really interested in supporting in any way we can to ensure that we get it right this time, right? Or like we get it closer to right. As we got to get we now are just telling lies. So we just need to get closer to the truth, right? Now, what that is in the middle, but still, it just right now we're telling blatant lies in some of our historical contexts. And again, that's around a multitude of areas. And so I've talked to Teresa about that, and I would love to get you all's input as we really to move on that, because we are looking to submit recommendations as a county. And so we would love to have some input from you all about the recommendations. And then I also urge you all to present it as representation of the citizens of your tribes as well, right? Because the more impacted people are contacting the state, the more likely the information will be more accurate.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. One last thing I want to read on here. Somebody said, the only thing that I've heard, Nicole was sharing this again, the only thing I've heard as of recent is about the extreme levels of poverty, drug abuse, etc. within the reservations and cities where there are reservations. And that is true. You know, and that's true for any people group, that you're going to hear more the negative than you are about any of the positive things going on. Cara Jean, thank you for that. She said, I really appreciate the thought-provoking discussion. And today, thank you to the panel members for taking your time to share your perspectives and experiences with us. So again, I thank you for this opportunity. I really, really, really thank you for just allowing us to have a voice and an opportunity to speak on behalf of Indigenous people and the Native American Indian groups and communities. And I greatly appreciate Ken and Keith and Raymie for taking your time to be part of our panel today. Hopefully someday in the future we can do this again, maybe even pick a different topic and go for it if you guys would be willing. Thank you for those that joined us today. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I don't know if Monica or Cara Jean Diane want to close us out.
Diane.
Thank you all so very, very much. Yes, we have another person who joined our little group here. They've been very patient. Thank you all so very much. I've had just an amazing time researching along with Teresa the newsletter that's on the Equity and Diversity website is all devoted to Native American Indian heritage, and it's if I have to say so myself, some pretty interesting articles in there if any of you care to log on and read that. Again, thank you. This is absolutely amazing, and it's about time.
It is. Thank you so very much. I don't know, Monica, do you need to end, or how do you want to?
No, I think Diane said it. I'm happy she mentioned the newsletter. That newsletter was one of my favorites. I mean, she does some amazing newsletters, period. But this was a really great one. I learned so much from reading a newsletter myself. When she gave it to me for review, it was like my own teachable moments. And so the stories that Teresa shared and came from you all. So thank you for that. I do want to let you all know where this will be going out. We will be sharing this with all of the principals as well as the social studies. I said social studies as well as teachers, but I meant social studies teachers. They will be getting this information as well as all of our equity champions, because I really want to make sure the video and what you all shared went out, because I think that sometimes when we have these virtual meetings, they've been in virtual all day, and then you're asking them to do yet another virtual in the evening. But the information that you all put forward is so important that I really want to make sure that they have that. And that will go out along with the newsletter again to them that Diane worked with Teresa to put together around Native American Indigenous Month. And Ken, I'm going to be seeing you soon, because I am looking forward to looking at a project, some information around sciences, because I want this to happen more than in just 1 month. The idea of this work is it needs to be throughout the school year. And so that's really important that we reach out with you, and so we can embedded into another space at a time that it doesn't just happen during the month.
Absolutely. And I also want to put a little promote again
Thank
out.
you.
So Saturday, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour presentation for just teachers on SOLs and correcting some of the stuff currently before we actually are able to get it into writing.
Right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'll see you, Teresa, on Saturday.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
All right.
See you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.